Sister Waddy is here. Okay, here you are. So before I pass it on to you, Sister Waddy, I would like to introduce you. You have been with us, I think, a few years ago. You'll be telling us soon, I know that. But I need to introduce you again to the audience. And Sister Waddy is a very senior Rajyogi, almost, I must say, 50 years into knowledge now. And she is one of those first students of Dadi Janki who was so inspired by Dadi Janki's company. And also, Sister Waddy mentions that she had a profound experience in Madhuban, which made her dedicate. Madhuban is for people who don't know, Madhuban is the Mount Abu campus, which we have of Brahma Kumaris. Our international headquarters are there. After that, it's London. So after having a profound experience there, she dedicated her life into service. And then it's been almost 50 years now. She has been a spiritual student and a teacher, and she serves, not works rather, she serves as the coordinator of Brahma Kumaris in Florida and has spoken at many events in South Florida. And if I want to tell you a few programs which she was a part of, and she's still an active member of that, it is the EVO, IVOH, the Images and Voices of Hope. And now it's called the Peace Studio in South Florida. And she's also involved as a core team member of that. And as always, we are speaking about decency. So let me just also introduce and share a poem about her. So Sister Waddy, in her service, is full of spiritual decency. That's because she's abundantly gifted with proficiency. In her dealings, there's always a lot of transparency. And indeed, there's no scope at all for complacency. Her working style is filled with utmost efficiency. That's because in her behavior, there's no deficiency at all. Living in the sorry, I'll just take a minute and let you laugh as well. So living in the confluence age as a regency, where there's absolutely no insufficiency. Her talks are full of power and coherency, which radiate and vibrate with a spiritual frequency. And finally, she's indeed in her effort, having a lot of consistency, and she asks all of us also to be the same and avoid leniency. So there you are, and thank you so much for being with us. It's wonderful to have you again after, I think, a gap of 2 years. All yours, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manoj. Your welcome has, of course, the immediate result of totally disarming one, because it is so unexpected and it comes with such sincerity and such sweetness, despite the fact that we've never actually physically interacted with each other. And so even as you were mentioning all of those things, we all know that it's really what you're saying. Although ostensibly you're saying it for me, but the truth of it is you're describing yourself. And I'm quite sure that anyone who knows you would agree with me, and that would just be a limited version of all of the qualities which you have. And I'm very touched by the fact that this project with all of the virtues has been running for so long, and it came, as you told me a little earlier, as at the same time as the COVID thing. That's when we all became very familiar with Zoom as an alternative way of interacting and serving and connecting with people. And that now is a number of years, and I quickly scanned the list of all of the virtues that had been taken up by countless instruments, teachers, lecturers, students, and workshopped from A through Z, each and every one of them, and all with no doubt the aim of deeply understanding the virtue and its application and the degree to which one may or may not have it and how to avail oneself of it. And so I would imagine the result of all of these virtues, that if we were all expressing them and we were all the embodiment of these virtues, what kind of a culture would we have? What kind of a nation would we live in? What kind of a world? What kind of a garden would this be? There would be no need at one level to even think in terms of certain virtues, because there would be no one or nothing to test those virtues. And so I guess the only thing would be love. That would be, at the end of the day, it would be a culture of love. And then that love would be filled with each and every single quality that has been spoken of until this point. And so I think when this topic came up and we discussed it, or when I suggested it, I feel that decency is something that is perhaps underrated. And it is such a basic component in terms of, do we want to call it a virtue? I'm not even sure if we would call it a virtue. And is it something that's inherent? Is it something that's taught? Is it just a behavior? Does it simply come down to good manners? You know, many years ago, there was a situation here at the center, and there was two little kids. There were two little kids, and one was about 4 years old, and the little boy may have been about 3.5, probably a little less than 4. And the little boy was given a magic wand. And the little girl, they didn't know each other. The little girl started crying and kicking up such a fuss because she didn't get the magic wand. She was practically inconsolable. She was really having what we would call a hissy fit, you know, and nothing her mother could say or do would make any difference. And then, while all the adults were observing this scenario, the little boy, as I say, and he wasn't even 4, he went over to her, he put his arm around her, and he gave her the magic wand, which she instantly accepted, didn't think. And so where did that come from? Was it innate? Or was it something that was learned? He was too young to have been taught, in a sense, you know, what decency is. And you can see in that his behavior wasn't just that he did the right thing, which you can't even talk about for a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, but there was an element of compassion. Each quality is filled with so many other things. And so to me, it was the decent thing to do that I would maybe have expected were it 2 adults, but not 2 children. And so it was such a profound lesson or question for me. Did he learn it? Was he educated? Did his mother teach him? And she was as surprised by the action as everyone else. but it almost seemed like as if it was an innate thing. And so I do see decency as a behavior. You know, sometimes when we reflect on what it is that the supreme source of energy wants to teach us, being a little bit reductionist, I feel that what God has to teach us, and I don't mean it to sound mundane, but is simply good manners. And so not good manners in the form of just etiquette, because that can be a social construct and may be different in this person's land and that person's land. But the manner, the way of doing things, a manner that comes from an attitude, a manner that comes from perhaps even an old memory that lies in the soul itself and that intuitively knows what is the right way to behave, and that should be guided by love, empathy, compassion, respect. And so these seems like very, very fundamental things. And yet I do sense that the most fundamental thing that that supreme source of energy teaches us is respect. And that respect, first and foremostly, is for our own selves and reminds us that there may have been a time, or that there was a time, when our behavior and our way of being matched that of the divine itself. And so then decency for me is one of the building blocks of what hopefully will be a new culture, a new way of being. Decency takes into consideration the other. Decency will not be tainted by mere selfishness or arrogance. There'll be an aspect of generosity. There'll also be an intuitive understanding of karma, of cause and effect. And they may be the expression of decency. You know, as I say, it could be just in good manners, like holding the door open for someone, giving someone your seat on the bus. These are very, very simple things. But the other quality that goes along with it is consideration. And I think when there is this practice of decency and respect, that it's then becomes like a speeded up aspect, and that just automatically you don't have to weigh something, that it's almost like automatic. So it can no doubt be a learned behavior, but I really do think that decency can morph into heroism. It can morph into nobility, into something much larger. You know, I remember someone telling me this story once where they had been in, I guess, a bar, and there was a fellow who was very drunk, and he had smashed a bottle, on the counter, and he was about to attack, presumably, the woman that he was with. And my friend got in between. This was something that had happened with this person. I only came to know them after being involved in this spiritual life, and they been involved in this spiritual life. So for them, it was a way before in their youth. And he got in between the man with the smashed bottle and the woman, and prevented anything untoward from occurring. And in fact, at that time, I had asked him the question. This is the story he then told me. I asked him if he would be willing to die for a friend. You know, it's a strange question, perhaps, but I asked him if he would be willing to die for a friend. And this was the story he told me. And in other words, at the end of it, he said, Waddy, if I was willing to die for a stranger, and you're asking me if I would be willing to die for a friend? And so again, what was it that compelled him to do that? You know, at one level, it was an act of decency, but ultimately it became something of heroism, because both preventing any harm from coming to the woman and preventing the man from performing a horrendous act. And so this is the thing, as I say, with decency, that it has a goodness, it has a kindness, and it doesn't have so much selfishness in it. You know, what prevents decency? Can we say that today that people operate a lot out of decency? The expression is common decency, or this is human decency. You know, would be to maybe inform somebody you're not keeping the appointment, or, you know, passing on information, or to contribute something. I don't think there's as much decency. The possibility is there, but the expression of it has been perhaps subdued. And where, you know, I just came in at the end of the question and answer part, and I was seeing something to do with like social media and the inference of like bad behavior, where people are so quick to feel insulted and to take offense, and then to justify a similar behavior, to act in the same coin. And so decency, one of the things, you know, it's that idea that a first lady mentioned at one point, and she said, when they go low, we go high. You know, so, but the tendency, the old-fashioned way, or what in the Bible would have been understood to be an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, although I'm not sure that the way that it's often understood is what exactly was meant. I think what they were saying is that there is such a thing as karma. They weren't advocating that if somebody does something bad to you, you need to do something equally bad to them. And so it's the old way is with revenge and malice, whereas the awareness that I'm trying to participate in the creation of a new humanity, a new way of being. And so it does not afford me the luxury of those kinds of attitudes, but rather how to draw on some degree of patience. And one of the things that I see when there is just the thought of doing the right thing, of aiming for the higher ground, it's almost as if there is an instantaneous assist. Now, don't ask me where the assist comes from. It could be from on high. It could be from the person next to me. It could be from some circumstance or another. But I really do feel that there's the whole thing of karma kind of, I think, is speeded up at the present time, and that it works both detrimentally, and we all know the situation where we had a bad thought about someone, or there's irritation or anger, and you stub your toe or you trip, and it's almost okay, instant karma. But the flip side works as well, in that as soon as there is the thought, and as a yogi, we are encouraged to connect with that supreme source of energy. And as soon as there is the remembrance of that and all that it entails, which by its very nature is pure goodness, then it dissolves. It dissolves in a heartbeat that less than holy thought that I may have been having for or about someone else. And it's as if a portal opens, and that it's kind of like turning on a faucet of the purest, best water imaginable. And that portal, just by your thought, that's what opens the portal, is your pure thought, either of the remembrance of God or of your own self-respect or of love, any of those things. And then there's some kind of help that automatically comes. It's like there's a shower, the ceiling opens, and there's a shower that is going to aid and abet you in furthering the nobility of your thought or of your intention. And so decency will have no ill will for anyone else, because you intuitively understand that if you have these sentiments towards anyone on whatever basis, religion, gender, race, anything else, then it is going to come back to you. You have diminished yourself. You have even let yourself down in your own eyes, in a manner of speaking. And so one of the things, when you act from a place of decency, it's easier to live with yourself. Because if you're not coming from a place of decency, you have to justify what you just did or what you just thought or what you allowed to happen. And so you're able to live with your own self. And I think that with other people, when they see you operate from a place of decency, which, as I say, means good wishes for everyone, not favoritism, or this one gets to play with me because they did this and this and this, but that you're equal in terms of your vision for everyone, then not only will your behavior maybe, and you're not doing it because of this, act as an inspiration for them, but they will trust you. They will trust you. And so that this thing of decency, yes, it is like a building block, but there's so many other things that are there in its wake. Someone mentioned the other day, and I liked it, the idea of decency being like a ladder, you know, and that each act that you perform from a place of decency, it's like another rung on that stairway to heaven, so to speak, you know, that you're climbing up. And okay, it may not work in other languages, but there's a very similar word to decency. Sometimes when we think of the flip side of decency, not so much indecency, but dissent. The two of them, except for one letter, they're spelled the same way. So there's decency and then dissent. And so if I'm not operating out of decency, I'm not increasing, I'm descending. I'm not going up the ladder, but I'm coming down the ladder, you know. And in my coming down the ladder, it makes it that little bit harder, perhaps, for others to see their next rung as well. So, you know, what gets in the way of decency, behaving in a decent manner? I think poverty. And I'm not talking now about poor people, because we all know that very often the poorest of the poor will be the most decent, will be the most generous, but it's where you feel that there won't be enough for you. So there's a kind of a poverty consciousness. There's a fear that, you know, if I do the right thing, if I contribute, if I, you know, speak up or whatever, I'll get in trouble, or that there won't be enough, that my generosity won't extend that far, that I can only love so much, I can only respect you so much, that I put the limits. I put the limits on my decency. So some kind of fear, you know. And the thing with decency, it's not self-serving, you know. It's not tinged with, you know, ego. And then also I was thinking that, you know, I'm remembering a time in my own life, again, way before again, but rather than get into the detail of it, which I'm sure it would not be of interest to any of you, but that you can never justify the circumstances that you find yourself in as an excuse not to be decent. You know, that if decency is there in you, you will not allow circumstances to compromise that decency. Do you understand? Because sometimes you know, say, oh well, you know, because I didn't have any money, that's why I stole something, or because nobody would pay attention to me, you know, I had to insist, I had to be aggressive, you know. And so, no, as I say, it's such a simple thing and such a an underrated thing that we may miss it. And yet it is such a component part of building the right culture, of contributing to your own sense of self. That self-respect without decency doesn't work. It's not self-respect then. It's the illusion. And it's tinged rather with some kind of arrogance. And I'm not talking now about being so selfless that you let people walk all over you, or that, you know, that you're always the poor one. No, no. In fact, the decency will have a very healthy sense of self-respect, and it will not have fear in terms of its expression. You know, they won't allow that to come into play. So, you know, when they talk about decency, it won't have the tendency to be insulting. It won't be abusive. You know, whereas nowadays language, you know, even this word decency would be used in relation to how one dresses, you know, like that they're not dressed decently or whatever. Perhaps it just means appropriately, you know, what is appropriate in a particular setting or whatever, you know. And so anyway, that's sort of, I think, is there anything more to be said about decency? I think that's a lot, no? Where do we go from here?
Okay, so you've done, is it? Okay. Right. So we have 15 more minutes. So maybe we'll take a few questions and I'll invite the participants. You'll have the beautiful chance to interact with Sister Waddy. You all can unmute and speak. I'll just ask you one more question. I mean, a few questions. When someone is rude with me, how do I deal with them?
Well, you have to make sure that you don't exchange the same, in the same coin, that you're rude back again. And it can be a way of examining your own self and seeing how quickly your ego got involved. And then, having been touched, what does your ego want to do? It wants to react. It wants to come back with a smart, you know, jibe perhaps at the other person. And so I just think that, again, the world today, people, all of us, are running on, you know, not even half empty tanks, but there may be only an eighth of a tank left in the in one's heart, or whatever, because there's so many assaults. And the essential component, again, I think what we come back to is to do with respect, right? And so self-respect. Now that other person, I think the thing that can change things is when I can somehow communicate that I respect you. And that, I think that makes a difference. It's a question I sometimes ask people. Do you feel that you're more in need of love or respect? And in general terms, I really see, and proven by the answers that I get, people are in need of respect. They want respect from other people because they don't have enough for themselves. And so for me, it would be that thing of, again, checking myself and see where my ego got involved, if it got involved, and then, you know, if the person's insulting me, what's the reason? Maybe I did do something wrong. You know, am I willing to, you know, again, we get defensive. We're not very good at taking criticism. And am I willing to immediately say, which bursts the bubble immediately, you are right, and this was my mistake.
Full. So, Sister Edna, yeah, go ahead. You had a question. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I just
Hello.
I, I just wanted to ask, how do you deal with difficult people who you need to deal with them every single day? You try
Mm,
to break the ice and you try to be very humble to them, and you give them the respect they need. You're doing everything to make the relationship work, and but the other person or the other soul is not willing to cooperate. So how like you do it, then you get tired, you pick yourself up and you do it again, and you don't see anything changing on the other end. So how do you go about it? How can you strengthen that relationship? What
right.
am I missing?
I'm not sure you're missing anything. And again, every situation is different, but we kind of position it in terms of I'm the good guy and they're the bad guy, you know, and it's never as, you know, black and white as that, is it? And for me, many uh, quite some time ago, this awareness of a difficulty in relationship, not so much, I wouldn't even put it in terms of a difficulty in relationship, but in other words, it came down to the same thing. I wanted this other person to behave in a particular kind of a way. And so year in, year out, and I'm saying, look, I've told you 10 times, I've told you 20 times, I've told you 100 times, and still you keep doing the same thing. And then one day I finally got it. And that was that you may want them to change, but they don't want to change. And so why am I imposing my way or my assumption of how something should be on them? And further, that even though I was saying, you know, I've told you for the last 10 years or whatever, and you haven't changed. But you know what? In those 10 years, I hadn't changed either. And so it was like, it was a revelation for me. And I'm not saying that I changed entirely, but at least the recognition that I was trying to impose something, and again, or that I will be good with you up until a certain extent or for a certain period of time, but then you have to give something. But it doesn't work like that either. You know, my contract with God is self-change. If others change by way of inspiration or some behavior that's being modeled, great, but it can't be my objective to change somebody else. And so back to this thing of decency again, or any quality for that matter, a measure of it will be how deep it is within me is only seen by how I deal with its opposite in somebody else. Do you understand? So in other words, I might say, decency is my sanskar, honesty is my sanskar. And that's why I'm so bent out of shape when you tell lies. No, rather, if I'm bent out of shape by your lies, I don't have the sanskar of honesty. I'm trying to instill it and thinking that if everybody else is honest, it will be easier for me. And so whoever's in front of me, they're not there by accident. They have a reason for being there. okay, you have situations where, yes, you have to move away. You have to move away where it's intolerable. It is not your self-respect to stay in that situation. But for the most part, no. These are people that we encounter on a daily basis. And so they ultimately are the ones who are going to give me my certificate. And so I have to just keep on improving myself to where I'm either immune to what it is that the other person is doing, or when my sanskar or my virtue is a divine virtue, you know. So one thing is a virtue, another thing is a divine virtue. When it's a divine virtue, then there will be perhaps transformation in the other. But at least my transformation will have happened. I'm not sure if that's helpful, but
Well, thank you so much.
pleasure.
Right. So it's a beautiful answer. I think there's another question which I'll take, and then I'll go to Sister Reina. She has also got another question. This question is in relation to social media. You touched upon that, but the question is that I'm very vulnerable. Probably it's the age where we are, very fast thoughts going on, and I'm so vulnerable to people's comments and what sort of thing going on social media. How do I decrease my vulnerability? Can meditation help me? But when I meditate, that person comes to my mind again and again. So I don't want to meditate. That's the question.
Yes, like someone once said, you know, if I love you, you're forever in my heart. And if I don't like you, you're forever in my head. You know, that that your mind goes there again and again. Again, very wary of the whole thing of social media and how huge an influence it is or it can be. And you know, you use the word vulnerable, and so it's a little bit like sensitive. That sensitive can have a good connotation, that I'm sensitive and that I pick up and I'm able to use that sensitivity to maybe help someone, that the sensitivity is more of an intuitive nature. But then the sensitivity that gets upset and is very volatile and, as you say, vulnerable. And the same thing with vulnerability, because so everything can be changed. And for me, I see vulnerability also in a good way, you know, that vulnerable, allowing yourself sometimes to be vulnerable is a measure of honesty, you know, that, but the kind of vulnerability that, like the sensitivity, that somebody says something, somebody implies something, and I get upset, then I really, just like, again, if I have allergies, then I don't sit under the trees that are blossoming or whatever else, because I'm going to have an attack. And so by putting myself out there in terms of social media, if I have that kind of vulnerability, then it's not going to, by confronting it, it's not going to strengthen me. I really do need the meditation, because meditation is going to, it's a very good exercise in reality, what's real and what isn't. And so it's amazing when we talk about, you know, social media, you're not even dealing with a real person in a manner of speaking. You know, it's an image, and it's, anybody can say what they want. You know, if you were face to face with someone, you wouldn't say those things. You wouldn't behave in that way for the most part. But there's a kind of a by being just on a screen. It's like you think it affords you some kind of not just protection, but rather that you have the right to say whatever you want, and because nobody's going to reach out and smack you or push you or physically connect with you. And so definitely meditation for a good healthy dose of what's real and what isn't, and what's of value. And so what sometimes I feel that we're doing on social media is you're allowing everybody else to dictate who it is you are, and you're believing it, and you're being affected by it. And so that you're totally under that influence. Whereas in meditation, as said earlier, that supreme one is giving you an image of yourself in terms of eternity, is showing you the power that you had, the power that you have, the power that you will reconnect with and re-emerge, and makes me less needy of other people's approval and other people's opinions. It's like, who do I believe? What everybody else is telling me about myself. Yeah, you'll get all those comments, but in meditation, why is God asking us to remember him? He's asking us to remember him so that we can remember ourselves, that we can remind ourselves of who it is we are, what we've become, and and how to become. I think one of the things of decency too is this aspect of usefulness, where you become of use to God and to humanity, and not least to your own self. And on the one hand, serious business, and on the other hand, that being has such a wonderful sense of humor that you can end up laughing at your own self and the games that you played until there was clarity about who you are.
Okay, wonderful. I think I'm afraid the time is up, but if Sister Reina can just have a quick question and a small answer from your side.
Okay, small answer.
And a quick question, yeah. Over to you, Sister Reina.
Hello.
It's not too, yes, it's not too quick, but you can decide. So the thing is, you were talking about, people being rude. So some people, are rude to you out of their habit, and sometimes they just want to get the better of you, or sometimes they just want to test you, how deep you are in waters, okay, how egoistic you are, these things. So sometimes it's easy to distinguish why they're doing it, and it's easy to respond if we can distinguish. So how differently do I respond, or how can I distinguish what is the purpose behind this person being rude to me?
Well, I'm trying to think of a practical situation, but maybe you can tell me. What do you do? It's interesting that you've made the distinction between the two things, and which one is, why are they doing it?
How
They
I
want to
detect
see-
is
Yes.
yeah. If the person is very transparent or very simple-minded, it's very easy to detect when they are being rude, because they don't look very rude. Okay, they might be very peaceful outside. If they're doing it out of the habit, it shows. Their vibes also come. But sometimes people are very cunning. They are very smart in hiding their vibes as well. So in that case, how do I distinguish? Or if I distinguish, how differently do I respond?
Wow, I'm not seeing that they're could or should be a different way of responding, especially if you have seen but what it is that's behind it. You know, there's you know, why are people rude? It can be, it could just be force of habit. Some people's nature, external nature is just like that. You know, it's like, say, for instance, the difference in, you know, say the East and the West, where in India, we came to learn that please and thank you wasn't so much used in terms of interactions, right? And so maybe to begin with, we'd think, well, they didn't say we did this, but they didn't say thank you, which would be, and it's a cultural thing. So it's not any intention of being rude. And so once you know that, then you're not going to react to it. That the intention was not there. And I don't know if that is something that applies in your situation. But again, one is a cultural thing, and the other thing is sometimes it's hard for me to imagine the situation where somebody's testing you. They want to see how you're going to react. And so if that's the case, then it's easy, isn't it? You're not going to react, you know, because you know you're being tested. And so you want to pass the test. And so by all means, pass the test, but not for the other person. Pass it for yourself.
Wonderful. Hats on. That's the answer. Pass it for yourself, not for others. Thank you so much for being so patient and decently answering all our questions. That was okay. So I would now request we have seniors with us, Dr. Ashok Mehta first. And
Hello,
Sister-
Dr. Mehta. Nice to see you.
Shanti,
Long
Waddy,
time, long time. Oh, Om Shanti.
I think Waddy did a tremendous justice to the subject of decency. We all want to be decent,
Yeah.
but most of the time, you know, there are situations when we fail, and in that case, I think it's we have failed in our test of being
Yeah.
totally spiritual in Baba's Gyan.
Yeah. There's an expression that my mother used to use. Oh, you let yourself down a bagful, meaning that you didn't live up to your own standards. You know?
We have to achieve that very high standard.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
most of us, we know that we fail quite often in practice, dealing with simple situations.
Yeah.
You know, it's like somebody presses a button and you lose your patience, or you lose your you know, decency, if you want to call it that way.
Yeah.
I think decency is a test for all of us, to be continuously decent, all the time to be decent, and never to be indecent.
Yes. Never to descend. Decent and not descend. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's a simple thing. It's like, you know, rather than the big idea of like you should have love for everybody. I can't say that I love everybody, but I know how to be decent. I know how to be respectful. I know how to be kind. These are the small things, but these are the things that are the building blocks that really create the whole structure, you know, piece by piece. Yeah. Decent man, good man. Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Mehta, you are speaking something, but you have been muted. Please unmute. I don't know what has happened. Yeah. You have to unmute. Yeah. Yeah.
I think she has given us a lot of good answers, good keys to test our decency. And I think the important thing is that to have respect and love. And I think that's a test for your decency, that you are respectful and loving. despite whatever is being told to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Waddy. It was very enjoyable.
Thank you. Nice to see you after a long time. Yes. Hello, Claudia.
Shanti, good
Oh,
morning
good morning.
on our side. It was so much pleasure to be with you. It's like we are in the same room, just talking to each other.
Yeah.
It's so nice because you are so easy and talking about this subject, and I feel just it's a pleasure to be. We cannot be in the physical, but at least in the Zoom, we feel like we are with each other talking about something so important in our life. Because at the end, we see we have to be decent to our own selves. That's the point.
That's the point.
That's, and so what else can we do? So if we don't do that, so how can we, you know,
Oops.
be happy at the end? So if we are not listening to our own, so I think that she frozen.
Whoops. What happened here?
Yeah, she got frozen.
Yeah, she's got okay, yeah, maybe she's
What
done
happened?
something.
Yeah, I think I did something here.
Yeah, but we can hear your audio. There's a lag of
There we
video.
go.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. There we go. I was trying to take a picture. There we go.
So that's got frozen. That's good. That means we stay a little bit longer. Well, thank you very much, Waddy. It was so
Pleasure.
much pleasure to be
Pleasure.
with you this moment.
Thank you for
very
the
much.
invitation. Hope
Yeah.
to maybe
So,
see. Yes,
yeah.
Manoj bhai.
So thank you so much for the vote of thanks, both of you. And let me just, before I go on to the meditation, the closing meditation, which you will be doing for us. So I'll just do the announcements quickly. So as always, the next week we have a workshop, the workshop is over. So we have the next episode, which will be 86th. And it's on efficiency. In Hindi, we call it Karya Shamata. So we have another senior Arjun with us, Sister Denise Lawrence from France. We'll be sending you the links as well and the invitations. And yeah, I forgot that as Sister Anu has mentioned in the chat box, if there are any new participants who have joined today, quite a few actually were new, I felt. And if you want to be a part of the series, this series will go until November Diwali this time, where we finish 100 episodes. So please share with us your WhatsApp numbers and also your email addresses so that we can send you all the materials as well. And as always, followed by the talk, we have the workshop as we're having it today. So a week after that. So it will be on Saturday, 23rd of March, very close to the beautiful festival of Holi. And we have another holy sister with us, Sister Marilyn. She'll be joining with us from Boston for the first time. And she'll be sharing as Sister Waddy is doing today after the facilitation exercises. These are our email addresses and our websites. Please feel free to visit them. And if you have any feedback, comments, suggestions, queries, please email us as well. All these are recorded and they are available in different languages as well. And the episodes of the series and also the workshop episodes which we are doing today, all is recorded. So the links are here. I'll stop sharing the screen. And I just wanted to also say that Sister Waddy and we had a small chat before I approached her. Like I was thinking of sobriety, but you said it has it has not to be taken in that context because in the USA it has a different meaning. But though we say in India a sober person is a decent person, but it has a different connotation in the Western world. So therefore we said, do you want to touch upon that or it's not
No,
needed?
I was remembering that, when you asked me to take the topic of sobriety, I only see sobriety as somebody who doesn't drink alcohol, that it could have been a problem. Sober means it comes across as, somebody who's very serious and what have you. That's why I said, let me go with decency, because I feel decency is underrated, and yet it's such and it's something that each and every one of us can work with. Sobriety, not so much, but decency, yeah.
In the Divine Drama Plan, it was you who was supposed to do the workshop, Talk Decency. Thank you so much. And I know you just came from Madhuban right now. So,
Yes.
yeah, so it's 9:45 for us in India. We'll go ahead with the closing meditation. And Sister Anu, if you can quickly take,
You
because all
can
of us.
take a quick
Photo.
photo. Yes, everybody, you can please switch on your video. Don't want to miss
Please.
this chance. Take an electronic photo with you, Sister Waddy.
How long for the meditation, Manoj Bhai?
5 minutes, is that okay? for
5
you?
minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
So you want a commentary, right?
Yeah, is that okay with you?
No problem. No problem.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I got the photo as well.
Thank you. All right.
And if there are some new participants, sorry, if there are new participants, please send it to Sister Vidhi or everyone, your email addresses, because people are sending it to me. Anyway, I'll send it to you all as well. Okay.
Oh, I've done it
So over
again.
to the closing.
And finally, I listened to the call. Having ignored it many times before. And knowing that I would respond at some time, at the right time. Maybe when everything else had been exhausted, all adventures taken, all relationships explored, and something in the soul saying, enough now. It's time. And in my hesitant agreement, something opened like a doorway. Opening wider. And encouraging me to come through. And there's a vast expanse of light and of space. And with a sense of wonderment, it's as if I'm being carried by a presence that I cannot see, but whose love and peace surround me and hold me and lift me and introduce me to another dimension. And this dimension of light and of peace is both new and also familiar. And I'm instantly at home. And the voice whispers, this is who you are. You are peace. And I'm surrounded and welcomed and embraced by this serenity, tranquility, and belonging. And I remember, this is who I am. This is my supreme parent. I am home.
So thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Waddy.
you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.